Up and running. All right, awesome. So 6:26, we'll call the meeting to order. You recording? Yep, looks like it. Okay. We have Diane, Steve, BJ, Kenny, and myself here, and Rosemary and Meredith via Zoom. So first item is changing addition proposals to the agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to add? No, okay, I'm going to add.
I want to add something to the warning.
Okay, we'll add that
When we do
when we do that. Okay, so two things to add. One is to do the warning for the village meeting, the warning for the annual elections, and also Troy wants to have a few minutes to talk for his crew. And so those are the only two changes I've got. So we'll start right off with, if nothing else, we'll start with the approval of the J.A. McDonald invoice, River Road Pump Station materials. So
yep, I can give you just a quick rundown of what it is. So J.A. McDonald is the firm that won the bid for the River Road Pump Station construction project. The actual construction isn't going to start until April, but thankfully they ordered materials back in, I think, November, given the long lead time to get things. So they started receiving materials for the project, now have incurred costs. So they've asked if we could pay this first invoice of about $37,000, almost $38,000 for materials that they have, on site at their shop for the project that's going to be built in, or going to go to construction in April. I've spoken with folks at the state. They are on board with doing this. The process is if you approve payment, then it goes to this who will review the invoices, make sure everything meets the Buy America requirements and all the grant requirements that they have for the project. And then they will tell us, okay, we approve it, and then we can go ahead and mint. And then we would turn around and then ask the state to reimburse us, which should take about a month. But we have to pay first because the grant is reimbursement, or the loan is a reimbursement mechanism. So it's, I think really to help them with their cash flow because they're sitting on about $38,000 of materials for our project.
Is there a dollar figure?
Rosemary, do you have it in front of you? I can pull it up on my email. It's about 37, I think 9, but
no, I didn't print it out.
You did not print it out?
Yeah. If you can get us a dollar figure, I think we can get that motion made.
I will get it right now. Just got to pull it up in my email. It is.
Well, do you have another copy of the agenda?
I don't.
It is $37,861.78.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the payment for materials to J.A. McDonald, sum of $38,861.78. Motion to
37,861.78.
37816. All right.
Yep.
Okay. 3861, not 816.
Yes.
A motion. So motion by BJ and seconded by Steve. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of said motion signify with an eye.
Aye.
And chair is aye. It's unanimous. It passes. Next is review draft for 2022 general department electric budgets. Department and electric budgets. So that would be these over here.
And
all right, Meredith, on again.
Rosemary, are you able to let me share my screen? I think you have to make me the host. I believe. Yep.
I hit the sharing screen and that didn't work.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hopefully it's up or coming up.
Yep, there it is.
Okay, so I think I'll start with the general department. And I'll just jump right in. Again, same as last time, feel free to ask me questions. This is a little, the one I sent, again, this is the master one that has all of my workbooks in it. And I do make some notes in it, but the numbers should line up. And I have the other one that I sent to you. So if you have questions, about a line, I can use the row number. I can look at that too. So, but I'll just jump right in. So for 2022, I'm proposing essentially the same tax revenue as in 2021. The grand list does not appear like it changed drastically. So if we apply the same tax rate, it's very similar amount that's raised by taxes. No, major changes. Updated the 10 cent from the grand list, which is money that the village receives from the town. It's a small decrease from last year. Pilot payment. I'm proposing that we budget 55,000. We budgeted only 50,000 last year, and it came at 55,000, which is great. And we got more revenue than we anticipated. We tend to be pretty conservative in our budgeting for this. Hopefully, it will come back at 55,000. I'm certainly not going to assume that we would get more than this year. So moving down in the revenues, electric department rent, and again, this has been updated in the last few years where we have both the water and sewer department in addition to the electric department paying funds to the general department related to use of village-owned buildings that contribute to the operation of those departments. So that's a pretty big chunk of revenue for the general department. The electric department pays the general department, similar to the pilot payment we get from the state. We do a payment in lieu of taxes to the village from the electric department. And just moving on. So, we've got some just miscellaneous income amounts. I have not looked at what the 1,300 was. I haven't asked Rosemary for that detail, so I can't recall why we got more in 2021 than we anticipated. But generally it's, just small things here and there that come in that we didn't anticipate. The big difference in 2022 as compared to 2021 is that we obviously are not going to be carrying the sidewalk project in the budget anymore. Thankfully, that is done. So last year we had grant revenue of $42,550, which was the grant that we received from the state for the Pearl Street sidewalk project. And then we also had budgeted in 2021 about $52,000 as the match, the 50% match to that sidewalk grant, as well as some engineering fees. When you look at here, the 2021 actuals, as I said in my email to the trustees, we had budgeted having to pull about $52,550 from the sidewalk reserve fund. Based on how it appears to me that the year ended, in order to balance the budget, I don't think we would need to pull all of that. I think we'd probably have to pull about $41,500 out of that sidewalk reserve fund, which is great. It leaves more in there for future projects. So this year, I'm not proposing, any at this point of the budget process, which is also good to not have to pull money out of the reserve fund. Moving down, as I think most of you are aware, we fully incorporate the fire department budget within the general department budget. So a lot of this is what you've already discussed with RJ in a previous meeting. I just put it into the general department budget. So I'm not going to go through it in great detail because I know he gave a pretty good presentation. Get rid of those notes. I think the towns were a 4.75% increase in 2022 over the 2021 amounts for the town of Johnson, Waterville, and Belvedere. So those are the monies that they pay directly to the village for the fire protection services we provide. We budget about $1,500 in billable calls revenue. That's if we respond to an accident and we're able to charge an insurance company for time, periodically that happens. We also have budgeted, again, $6,000 from NVU, which has been an annual contribution they make. It's entirely voluntary. I have not gotten word yet whether or not they will do that again in 2022, but I've put it in the budget, hoping that they will. If they don't, that may be a situation where we could either take money out of the reserve fund, or I think this would be an eligible expense to potentially use some of our ARPA funds for if we felt like, we were in a pinch and we had to balance the budget somehow or didn't have another source of funds. But, I'm hopeful that they will come through again. I haven't gotten any indication that they're planning on changing it this year, although there is new leadership at the university. So that's really it on the revenue side.
What's the $120,064? What is that? Adjustments to revenue.
Yep, that was money from the fire department's capital reserve fund. I think.
Air packs.
Yeah, for their air packs, which was a planned purchase that they had been saving for many years. So that's the money that came in from the reserve fund to complete that purchase.
So it's money from the fire department for the fire.
Yep, from their own capital reserve fund that they put money into every year for planned purchases. So moving on to expenses. So general government expenses, we allocate a portion of the trustee salaries to the general department. All 4 departments get an allocation. We allocate obviously a portion of our administrative staff time. It's based on percentages of time worked in each department. So this is the allocation for off staff time. Again, holiday and CTO time, it's a formula along with Social Security match and retirement program. It's just percentage based off of the salaries. Health insurance, again, is a allocation of a portion of all of our health insurance costs spread amongst all of the employees, and a portion of it goes to the general department. Electricity for the street lights. So the general department pays for the electricity for the street lights. The Cold Spring expense, this is generally expense related to replacing or repairing the pump that pumps the water up. Legal expenses, I budgeted a little bit more this year. We've had some legal expenses already this year. Potentially with some of the merger discussions, there may be more. So I bumped it up a little bit this year compared to what we budgeted last year and compared to the actuals from last year.
And it's for all the departments there?
General.
Yep, this is just general. So each of our 4 departments has its own legal expense line item.
I didn't see it in the, well, some of mine called outside services.
This 3,400 is the general department share, essentially 10% of the cost for the engineer for the village garage. We've budgeted about $5,000 for our audit, and then some money to put towards my time currently as a consultant. Some of that is allocated to the general department depending on what I'm working on. Here again, you'll see last year we had budgeted $107,000 for the Pearl Street Pearl Street Clay Hill sidewalk project. And so we are obviously not budgeting any of that this year. Insurance, this is our property insurance. I think, as I mentioned before, we have seen a decrease from last year and the bill we're getting from Passive. So that's great news. A little decrease from last year. I've kept allocate towards events and celebrations at 2,000. A lot of this money has historically gone to things like the Jubilee or other events. I do not have any of this earmarked, so to anything specific at this point, I've just put it in as a general 2,000 for event support, and you can certainly discuss if you want to have that more specifically earmarked for anything.
Can we add something to line 72 for the beautification? Can we add some money for that?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have. So I'll put in 500 for now, which is what we budgeted last year. And I think that we actually just recently, Rosemary, correct me, we just recently paid an invoice for about 500, I think, for beautification efforts. So that may not have been in the financials that I looked at in terms of actuals. I'm going to put that in for 2020 actuals, because I do believe the village did pay 500.
Yes, we still need to book that up as last year's.
It went under 2021.
Yeah. It's going
Yeah, yep.
Actually done it yet, but it's going to.
Okay, yeah, so thank you, Diane. And let's see, loan interest, it's just, I'm trying to, I probably could get a more accurate number from Rosemary, but I put in close to last year. VLCT dues, I have not heard of any major increase in their dues, so I kept it very similar to last year. Rosemary, correct me if you've heard anything about a big change this year. Okay, so I think we're safe with that. So under the miscellaneous expense, you can see for the 2020 actuals, they put in a big number. That is primarily back wages paid as a result of arbitration agreement or the arbitration results. So I just put them in there for now because I didn't have the breakdown to put into the individual line items, but eventually that I would think would get cleaned up, but I wanted to make sure to reflect them in the 2021 actuals, knowing that in a ballpark range that I think based on my calculations, that's how much would come out of the general department. So it's definitely not an exact figure right now, but I think that's a pretty close ballpark amount. I wanted to at least get it in here as an expense. Let's see, moving on. So postage, obviously last year was much higher than we anticipated. I believe that we had the special bond vote for the River Pump Station. So I think there was some mailage associated with that. And then obviously the the postage associated with the Australian ballot for the annual meeting. So I've have a slight decrease from last year. Rosemary, if you think by some chance it's going to be higher this year than it was last year, let me know. But I thought 3,000 would probably.
Word is wants to mail ballots to everybody.
Do you think I was thinking last year was especially high because I thought we maybe did an extra mailing with the sewer vote.
Well, we had 2 meetings. We sent ballots to everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it would
One in
be,
April and one in June.
so I guess just to kind of get this number right, I mean, the town sent out a notice saying if you wanted to absentee ballot, then you need to contact. I don't think we need to mail it to everybody. No.
Yeah, I like how we did it for the town meeting where we either have the option of coming and picking
Right.
one up or
requesting
going
or requesting one. Okay.
Do you want to do postcards or?
I mean, it almost depends on what's happening with COVID, right?
Well, no, we decided we're not doing a in-face meeting. We're going to do a informational meeting before, but about, I mean, the election, you can either come in person or you can get an absentee ballot.
Right.
So now do we?
I was going to send ballots to everybody that requested one that lives in the village.
Right. So do we need to send a postcard to let them know that that's the process, or is that,
They request work with town, I was on Mac and send them.
okay,
We send out.
so the postcard's the cheapest way to do it, right? Or is it?
Yeah, that's what, 40 cents a card.
Yeah.
There's about 800. Over some range.
But then we don't know what's gonna happen in November, right?
November.
Isn't that-
November, everybody's getting, well, we don't
Yeah.
pay for that.
Yeah, that's not
Oh,
us.
okay, okay.
So.
So, Rosemary, do you think the 3,000 is sufficient, given what we're talking about?
$20 is gonna let everybody,
I think
Card.
it's too much.
just say,
You think it's too much?
Yeah, let's see.
Think-
We're all being fan on.
That's
one
just
meeting.
send a notification, right? Well,
God, I hope so.
That's just send a postcard notification.
Postcard, let them know that if they want an absentee ballot, they need to request it,
Or they just come down here and vote. Either one.
one or the other, yeah, just like the town did. So $320 for that, if we have that, just that one meeting.
I put it back down to 1,500.
Back down to 1,500?
Because the utility mailing is not coming out the general, so, all right.
I put in 2,000, give us a little buffer. Does that sound good?
That's fine.
Okay. If we're searching for money, maybe we come back to it, but,
Maybe we gotta mail the village reports.
right.
All right, office supplies.
Yep, office supplies, we were a little under in actuals last year, but, the office, I would say, was not, functioning completely normally last year. So I brought it back up to, previous years, closer to previous years levels. Printing, publishing, I think, Rosemary, this is just related to the copier expenses.
Yeah, most of it's, copying for the village report.
Yep. Yep. So I think it should be pretty close to last year.
Whatever publishing we do in the newspaper.
Okay, yep. So equipment maintenance repair, that's just a sort of a catch-all if something comes up related to the office needing repair. I put in 500 for board trainings. I know that there's been discussions over the last year about wanting to do some board training, so I wanted to put something in there for that. We can talk about whether you think, that should be more or less.
Yeah, the open meeting law.
Meredith, is it just for trustees?
So that's influenced
The 500, everybody?
the village department general portion of training.
Yes, that's true. Thank you, Rosemary. But no, I don't think there's no reason it would be limited. It could be training for whoever. So I put it in computer support. I put in the same amount as budgeted last year. I'll have to look at why 2021 was a little bit higher than budgeted. But I think that we should be coming in pretty close to that.
Did you account for Nemric's increase in their support costs?
Did you say that they have?
Yeah. So
Okay.
They upward, they charged, it used to be like $1,000 a year and it went to 5,000.
Okay. So I'll bump this up to 1,750. And maybe I can chat with you offline just to make sure I get as accurate a number as possible. That one, let me highlight that one.
That service is shared across the board, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
if you're happy with that.
Let's see, moving on to water sewer. This is bills associated with, I believe, just the municipal building, water sewer. Yep. Mowing, that's the general department share of mowing that's done on municipal property. So for building maintenance, this is really 15% of what we budgeted for just sort of general building repairs across the municipality. Most likely some of that going towards doing the siding on the tower if that moves forward this year. Or we've talked for years about maybe doing something with the old mill house, but so there's total amongst all 4 departments, there's 15,000 budgeted for building repairs, and this is the 15% of that 15,000 that I've allocated to the general department. So town taxes, as payment to the town as appropriate. Moving down. So operations, maintenance, and labor. This is a portion of staff's crews pay related to working for the general department. Primarily doing sidewalk maintenance, storm drain maintenance, trying to think other general departments duties. I mean, it's a lot of just the general department type work, the primarily sidewalk, storm drains. I think that's the bulk of it. So it's often dependent on the weather and how much of their time gets allocated to the general department.
That also cover the light poles, or is that under the general department? You know, the flags and repairing the lights.
Oh,
That would be general, right?
the flagpoles, yes.
Yeah. The flag-
Yes, there's a street light expense in here. Yep.
The last storm, a tree came down at the Cold Springs there, broke a lamp and stuff like that. They went and replaced that. That would have been under the general department. Okay.
Yes. Yep. And I know Troy's indicated that, those streetlights are aging. They are starting to have more problems. So okay, all right. Troy indicated you were talking about a different streetlight, but the ones on Main Street, the pretty, sort of antique looking ones, those are aging and are having some ballast issues and needing to be replaced. So just heads up that there are going to be some expenses towards maintaining those in the coming years. Moving down for buildings and grounds, this is a share, the general department share of electricity for primarily at the municipal office building. Our share of the heat expense, the general department's heat expense. Water and sewer, Rosemary, every year have to remind myself for this individual water and sewer, we had water and sewer up above, and I can never remember why we have it in 2 places.
This is for the garage complex.
Okay, all right. Same with the mowing. It's allocation based on, I think, where it is. Building supplies, it's a general catch-all for things that are needed to support the maintenance of our buildings. And the 6,000, again, it's Rosemary, I will ask you to pull for me the 5428 so I can remember exactly what we put to it last year. I cannot remember. But again, it's, it runs about in the 6,000 range every year. So I thought that was a safe amount to budget. For street, sidewalk, and storm drain maintenance, this primarily includes the cost to do the storm drain cleaning. I've put in a pretty big increase this year because we were just experiencing all these types of services going up in costs with staff shortages. And so I know it was more this year than we anticipated, and I'm just a little bit concerned that it will be going up again in 2022. So I think I put in a 25% increase over what we experienced in 2021. I'm sorry, what did you say?
25% increase. Yeah. I was just asking Ken if that's in the construction field, that's what he's currently seeing as a norm for an increase. He said it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And and you'll see it also in the electric department budget for some of our supplies and parts. We just know that the reality is everything has gotten so much more expensive. So we've tried to bump things up accordingly.
Does this number reflect any plan to I don't know what needs to happen, but on Railroad Street, the storm drains are so sunken in the road is so much above it. So when you ride your bike or whatnot to and from the rail trail, or even when you drive, you hit these massive dips because the storm drains are so sunken.
So when you say
Right.
this, I can't see what you're pointing to. So when you-
That budget line, I was just wondering if that includes, and I don't even know how to determine if they need maintenance. I don't know what needs to happen, but they're just not flush with the road in any way or form, and they seem like they're just sinking more and more.
Are they sinking or is it because of, to me, is it because of
I'm
the,
not an engineer, I don't
no,
know.
I'm not asking you to be an engineer. I'm saying, is it because they've put another layer of asphalt on?
That's what I don't know. That's why I'm not sure if
Okay.
it's a storm drain thing or a road thing, but all I know is that it feels really awful with your car and it feels even worse when you hit it with a bike.
So you're talking like from the laundromat to the bridge, that portion of Railroad
Yes.
Street? Okay.
You've all.
Um,
Talking about.
So this line item certainly does not include enough money to do any sort of major reconstruction. Periodically, if, it's sort of like caving in, the guys can patch it together, but this is really just, it's primarily, most of the money in here is for the cleaning of the storm drains twice a year to get all the grit out of them, to make sure that they still can have water flow through them and do what they need to do. I think, small fixes here and there, I would say patches, nothing major in terms of a reconstruction. We definitely know that Railroad Street's storm drain system is not in good condition at all. We did the stormwater master plan that was completed last year, and then we worked with our LCPC to get some USDA funding, and Dufresne Group is doing a preliminary engineering report for upgrading the storm system on that section of Railroad Street, which is a necessary step to then try and get actual construction funds. So we're working towards it. It's not a fast process, but we definitely know that that's a piece of infrastructure that needs attention for sure. So unfortunately, this budget item is not going to do a major fix, but we are aware of it and trying to work towards that.
Thank you.
Yep. Snow removal expense. So the 2021 actuals were quite low. Troy indicated that he was working with the town on purchasing salt, and he thinks that perhaps we just we're never fully invoiced in 2021, because we definitely should have spent more of that on salt. So I included a similar amount for 2022, just knowing that 2021 number must be missing something, because we certainly had salt expense.
Not including the salt.
What'd you say, Rosemary?
Not including the salt.
Okay, yeah, so we should, we added about 3,800 to that, we'd be pretty close to the 5,000. So, and again, sort of speaking to increasing prices, it may be wise for me to bump that up a little bit more, maybe back what we budgeted in 2021, just knowing that materials like that are getting more expensive. I'm going to go ahead and do that, because I think that would be wise. Moving on. So parts and supplies, I believe this is primarily, things that the crew needs periodically throughout the year to maintain equipment and that sort of thing. Outside parts and repairs, so certainly equipment breaks, and they try and fix a lot of it themselves in-house. We have some very handy people, but occasionally we do need somebody like a welder to come in or do something like that. So we allocate money for that every year. Hardware, nuts and bolts type of stuff. Equipment, fuels, and oils. This is just the fuel for the Bobcat Bobcats, I should say plural, that are used to do sidewalk maintenance.
So given the nature of the gas being so volatile right now, and looking at the actuals in the past,
Yep. So probably I should bump that up a little bit more. I took the 2021 actuals, increased it by 40%, but we could have a
but looking at the
terrible
historical
year.
actuals,
Go ahead.
just looking at the historical actuals, it looks like, given the gas prices, they're where they're headed, I think I've bumped that up just a little bit.
Yep. I could maybe like 2019 actuals times 40%, his fuel prices are easily 40% higher than they were a few years ago.
Meredith, are you anticipating something needing a big repair? Because it seems like the way the actuals in the budget are looking for outside repairs and parts, it's pretty, you know. There's a thick pad there, maybe you can.
Yeah,
that-
I know that our smaller Bobcat is showing, it's about 7 years old, and it's definitely showing a lot of signs of wear. So I think they are anticipating that we're going to have some pretty big expenses related to that piece of equipment over the next few years until it's sort of eligible for replacement.
So
Yeah,
you,
we're always hopeful that we won't need it, but I think it'd be wise to keep that in there.
so you're increasing fuels and oils to 6,400?
I did. So I took the 2019 actual and increased it by 40%.
All right, so we'll call that 6,400.
Purchase capital reserve fund. So as I said in my email, we are not proposing to buy anything new big this year through the general department, but we do have some ongoing debt related to previous purchases for a share of a dump truck and a share of a pickup truck. So I think, and Rosemary, I can double check with you. I think these are pretty close to the annual payments for those vehicles.
Yes.
And then we generally put some money in for safety equipment. It doesn't look like we've used it in the last few years. There's money in the electric department for safety equipment specifically related to line work. So, I potentially could knock this down. I'm never comfortable not having anything in there for safety equipment, because if you need it, I want there to be money for it. But we can, potentially knock that down a little bit if we are trying to fill a hole.
Yeah, I think these days 500 is pretty reasonable.
Okay. And then up next are the fire department expenses. Again, you went through these in detail with RJ, so I'm not gonna go through them to any great degree. They budgeted labor, same amount as 2021. Budgeted the same amount as was budgeted in 2021, but which is a little bit more than the 2021 actuals.
Yeah. I will say we're also about 10 calls ahead of where we were this time last year. So.
Yep. Yeah, I think, if sort of everybody gets back to traveling more and there's more students around, I certainly think that those call volumes are going to go up. The Social Security match is just a formula. Interest on loans. I just pulled all of these numbers from RJ's budget. Here in RJ's budget, he has an amount for their capital purchases. It's a one lump sum. I've traditionally broken it up until interest and principal. I just need to go back and figure out that split. So right now there's nothing showing here. I will break it out and fix that when it comes time to do this for the final version. That's why that's highlighted, and just the money's correct. I just don't have it broken up into two places. Office supplies for the fire department, their training, which is pretty close to previous years. I won't go on, electricity. These are all things you talked about with him.
I do, looking at heat budget for the fire department.
Yep.
I don't think when he was calculating this, that he was anticipating the significant rise in heat fuel prices.
Yeah. I can follow up with him. I think that, there might be a little bit of a buffer in this insurance number. I think that's a little bit higher than what I projected the actual insurance to be, but I can talk to him and see if, he feels like we should update that.
Yeah, and I'd hate to get, go low on the budget on heat and lose it on, equipment, because we have to take it from somewhere.
Yeah, if you went with the 19 actuals again, you're looking at $400 to $500 more.
Yep.
Well, if you took the heat and went with a 40% higher, I mean, that's going to be like.
Well, I was just saying that the actual in 19 was 63%.
Yeah.
Oh,
And we hadn't put 40% onto that number.
right. So.
Yep, let me, I'll talk to him and see what he thinks.
Yeah, reach out. Like I said, I just don't want to be having to, rob Peter to pay Paul for heat for something we, at least now have a better idea of where it's headed.
Yep, absolutely.
Heat that building with a what?
So he's got some 4,500 in for building supplies, which is quite a bit more than the 2021 actuals. I do think that they know that there's some maintenance that needs to be done to the building. So I expect that that's why that's bumped up quite a bit over the 2021 actuals. Let's see. Again, fuels and oils, he's showing a pretty good increase over even the 2019 actuals. So hopefully that one is sufficient. Don't see anything else that's really too noteworthy. So I'm going to move on unless you have questions.
Well, also you guys.
Is there no cash on hand right now, Meredith?
No, what?
Cash on hand?
In terms, in this information here at the bottom, I rely on Rosemary to fill in. She's the one who keeps track of the accounts, so I do not have the data to fill in this bottom part. Usually, the way it happens is that once I sort of get the budget put together and finalized, then I hand off the spreadsheet to Rosemary where she fills in the bottom portion based on sort of how the previous year ended, and she's got access to the actual finance software that I don't use. So based on the changes we just made, it's looking like we're showing a deficit of about $1,400 based on bumping a few things up over where we started today. Not horrible based on some of our other budgets that we've looked at. That does not give me heartburn. I think we can go through it a little bit more and move some up, move some down. And I think we'll, as it's, unless the board has something in that's not in here that you feel like has to be in here and it's a big number, as this stands, I think this is a manageable situation.
So we're looking at close to a level fund then.
Yeah, currently, the way I started with the revenues, I assumed a level amount raised from property taxes.
Well,
Okay.
some good news this week.
Yeah, this one is, not losing sleep over this one.
I just have a question, Meredith and the board, I guess. So I was hearing there's some aging lamp poles, the stormwater drains needs, a massive overhaul. So is there a place where you're actively putting money in for like a reserve funds for those bigger expenses?
So this budget does not have any money put in specifically into the reserve fund. I know in previous years, and Rosemary can correct me if I'm wrong. She's certainly been doing this longer than I think in previous years, sometimes there was an actual, line item to put, 15,000 into the sidewalk reserve fund. That is not happening in this budget as it stands now. So if that's something the board would like to do, which is a great idea, we likely will need to either cut some stuff or try and raise revenue, most likely through taxes. And then other times, if we've finished a year, to the good, then we can roll that surplus into a reserve fund. Rosemary, does that sound accurate to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Continually level.
I think
Sorry, I was just saying that the danger of continually level funding, which seems great to the taxpayers at the time, but then it can snowball and turn into massive, massive jumps later on because you're not sort of, gently increasing things to pay for these bigger expenses. So it just.
yeah, absolutely, Kyle. I don't disagree with that at all.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm just kind of saying it as a statement in general. Yeah.
Yep. Yep, no, I certainly think it would be wonderful if we could get to a point where that is happening. That is a great thing to be doing, something we should be doing. We just, we've been hesitant, given the economics of folks right now, to put a lot of pressure on the property tax, but it's certainly worth talking about.
What does it look like with NVU? You know, have you talked to them? Do they have more kids coming to school, that kind of thing? You know?
It's been a while since I've heard an update from them. They have an interim president right now. I think so. I could certainly reach out to him and try and get a more recent sense, now that hopefully maybe things with the pandemic are normalizing a little bit, and they may have a better sense of where they see things going. I do not have a great sense right now of what they're anticipating things to look like in the next few years.
I actually did talk to Patrick Rogers, who's the administration admin, head of the admin there, and he said that fall numbers are looking good from last year. Of course, that can always change, but he's feeling pretty optimistic.
That would help with electric and water. Sure. All right, so is anybody interested in raising taxes? Which, I agree with Meredith and Kyle that having a reserve fund is always a good thing, but is this the year to take that on?
No.
We got electric rate increase potentials and water and sewer rate increase potentials coming. Do we only have all three in the same year?
Will so water doesn't take care of any of the drains, so that would be.
Storm drains is from the general department, the one we just covered.
I mean, why not put it out there like in a warning and have people like talk about it? Can you do that?
So basically what would happen is we run a budget and we have a number and they vote for yay or nay.
Right.
So
Right.
It would be awkward,
But if
just
you-
trying to get people to talk about it at that point,
Right.
because it wouldn't really go anywhere. You'd have
right, I mean, it was,
the opinion from A to Z.
yeah, and
You know,
yeah,
and if there's any way that we can stay away from any tax increase this year, everybody else is getting plenty of expenses added on to what's going on.
yeah. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. You're gonna pay now or pay later,
Right.
but I think right now it's gonna hurt the most. It's kind of my thought. Obviously, the board, the majority of the board would have to weigh in on this. So, I mean, I don't think putting it out there is a discussion item. I mean, letting people know that we should be doing this. I mean, I think that's fine, but I mean, what we're trying to accomplish here is a number for the vote for the village meeting. So it's not really a forum for that.
I guess I'd be curious as a taxpayer, what we're actually talking about for a tax increase. I mean, could it just be a really small one just to start this process going? And then, so it's not an all or nothing thing, but just even if it's just.
I'm not in favor of any tax increases here.
Okay. Rosemary, what was the Senate on 100 do for us? Approximately.
Is it what, $2,900, Meredith? You got that paper from you? The grand-
What you sent me, Rosemary?
What 1 cent could raise?
Um, let's see, it was 600 and, was it 671,000?
That's not right.
So
That would raise about $6,700. Does that sound right?
6,700. It's 1 cent.
I always look at the current taxes. We collect about 112,000. So as a percentage increase for folks, a 10% increase could raise 12,000.
Yep.
Right, but we're looking at possibly a 6% electrical rate increase. Is what we were discussing before.
Yeah.
Roundabouts, and then water and sewer's probably gonna be right behind it with probably close to the same, like.
The town, what's the town going up this year? Not very much. 3 or 4 cents or something like that.
We're all spending a lot more down at Sterling Market or where.
Yeah, I mean, I felt my check the other day, it was $99.74.
It's because them Dodge have small tanks. Mine's 110.
I got a 30-gallon tank. I just was getting
There's
close.
two in my van.
Was getting close to empty.
I guess it's just the difference of looking short-term and long-term, and how can we, in the short term, or you, how in the short term can you, start to create this reserve fund, so in the long term, it's not so painful, and you've got something to work with, because.
Yeah, I'm not gonna disagree with you.
Yeah.
I just, for me, right now, with I just think that the other 2 increases we got coming, town taxes going up, we can cover it with this fund right here, and if we, like I said, it's costing more, just as it's the same amount of stuff every day.
Can you take the money that like Kyle is talking about? So let's say it passes and you get it into a line item. And so if you write grants for, like, let's say the storm drains, can you use that money for a matching kind of thing?
Yeah, you put it in a reserve fund
Okay.
for the general department, which can be used for whatever we deem it necessary. So you don't have to, I mean, you can pigeonhole it and say, this is just for storm drains.
Okay.
The next board could change that, but,
Yeah, so
putting it in as straight up as a reserve fund.
because I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the grants, the money that is coming down to fix that kind of thing.
And it's being worked on. So, I mean, it's in process, right? The storm drains is in process, as you said earlier, right?
Yeah, we're doing the preliminary engineering report, which is a necessary step in order to be able to then go and seek actual construction funds. You have to have done a certain level of design and planning work before you can say, give me a pot of money to do this project. So that's the stage we're at.
Wasn't that for the library though? Wasn't that for the library drink water?
Railroad Street.
It was on Railroad Street?
So there was, the stormwater master plan included 30% design of a facility at the library to handle water coming towards it. We are now working with the Dufresne Group and the USDA grant to actually look at the pipes that lead up to that. So the part where Kyle's talking about with the drains in the road, that part that
Basically,
funnels water towards
each
the
drain
water.
doesn't go to the river. Each drain goes to like a DB, distribution box, more or less, and then gets shipped off that way. And then we
Okay,
just
'cause I just heard the library, so I didn't realize that it was extended and along the road. Okay.
But do you make a good point, Meredith? Do you know off the top of your head if that would need a match fund? Those kinds of funds that you're looking at? It would.
I suspect some do. I suspect there may be some out there that are 100% funding. But I know, like for a lot of the USDA grants, we qualify, I think, for 75%. So there would be a 25% match. So absolutely, there's the possibility that we would need to come up with money to match any grant funds.
Okay, so that's another good sort of just, again, short, long-term thinking, like if you put a little in now to be able to get huge funds later, that's a smart move.
So I guess we're kind of at a point now where we got a straw poll that we want to increase the taxes for this year to start to add to the reserve fund. You're in favor of it?
Level,
Huh?
staying.
Level?
I'm not in favor of any.
BJ?
I think we ought to look into getting the reserve fund going but I don't see us.
I can't see hitting everybody with, $6 hamburger.
I mean, especially what's going on in Ukraine, there's no telling gas could be $8 a gallon.
Yeah.
So.
So Kenny, how do you, what's your thinking of how to get a reserve fund going?
Probably most likely starting later and possibly being able to buy the money that's sitting around doing nothing right now. Because we have possibilities of using it for utilities.
The argument.
Okay, so I think the general consensus is not to increase it this year, but it needs to be, I think it needs to be started next year. Even if it's 0.5%, I just need to do something, but I just don't see how we can.
Yeah, if we can get the electric and the water sorted out now, so we don't have to increase them next year.
Right, yeah, I mean, those increases are kind of go in with a projection of what costs will be down the road, so you don't have to do it every couple of years, so. Okay, so I guess, Meredith, we're gonna try to hold to the hold the line this year and hope times are better next year.
Yep, that sounds good. So I will, follow up with Rosemary and RJ, a few other folks to try and answer a few questions that came up as we're reading through this. I'll come back. My thought is that, so you are going to be voting to approve a final version of all of the budgets at your meeting on the 14th. So my goal I'm going to try and get you what I'm going to call final drafts, maybe by early in the week of the 7th. So you can ask me any questions you may have during that week, and I can button it up so it's ready for you for your meeting on the 14th.
Thank you.
So that's sort of my plan. But so for now with the general department, we've got, as it stands now, about a $1,400 deficit that we need to shave and move some things around. I think it's doable. So we will get going on that. So I'll move over to electric unless anybody has any other questions.
You guys are all set on the general budget? Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So let's see. As always, we're starting with revenues. Excuse me. So the top line we call merchandising and jobbing. It's kind of a confusing title, but it's basically money that entities pay us to do certain electrical jobs for them. In the past, in previous years, you'll see if you go back 2017, 2018, some very large numbers. A lot of that was associated with solar projects coming in that required our staff to do a lot of work to prepare the system for them, and we bill them for that work. If not for those projects, we wouldn't have had to spend staff time doing this. So Troy develops estimates and works with the customer and bills them. And so this is a great way to cover staff time with outside funds. So for 2021, we had budgeted $25,000. We only are showing about $10,000 in actuals, but I believe there was a check for about $20,000 that came in from the folks doing the electric vehicle charging units at Jolly. So I think that work's actually not going to start until 2022. So I think that revenue will hit the 2022 budget. But it's a great way to, bring money in, and it helps pay for staff time. Not all that money pays for staff time. Obviously there are materials associated with these jobs that's included in the estimate. So a lot of times, sometimes customers provide materials, and then sometimes we actually go out and buy materials and charge the customer for it. So, it's not like this $35,000 is 100% offset for staff time. It also includes the cost of materials that we're going to have to buy, but it's split between the two. So for this year, assuming we've got about $20,000 already that we know we're going to get associated with that job at Jolly, we're anticipating, hopefully another $15,000 based on other projects that we will have going on in the community. It can be things like building new buildings and they need electric service brought to them, and so we charge for that. That's primarily it's new construction or renovations.
So that would be like calculating what Troy's been doing with the art studio
Yeah, yep, exactly. Well, the art studio, yes, yes, yes. Yep, that, if we are going to be doing any part of the job that's not part of our normal business, it's a special project, then, we charge the customer for that work.
Meredith, do outside entities usually come to you asking for those services, or do you kind of look for those extra jobs?
It's really in our service territory. There are parts of the work that we have to do, that, like it's not electrician work, it's line work. So it's not really an optional thing. They have to come to us. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So the next line is deferred revenue. This is the same amount that we put in the 2021 budget. This is essentially money that's left over. Sorry, I got a little one. Take her upstairs. Daddy's gonna take her upstairs.
Because you're off cue with someone else's.
Sorry. It's that time of night. So deferred revenue, this is money that's left over, money that came to the village in terms of for work to be done on Route 100C. And we've spent some of it in 2020. And so this is the remainder of what's left. If there's more of that project as time allows, the guys want to and need to keep improving the lines along 100C. So if we do that project, we can use this money on that project. So it's put in there as revenue available for that project.
So it's like a reserve. Is it like a
Deferred
reserve?
reserve.
Is it like a reserve?
Yeah, it is. It's sitting, Rosemary would know for sure, but I think it's sort of sitting over by itself because it can only really be used for this project. So it's sort of, it's like a reserve fund.
Comcast paid for that money. About 10 years ago.
Right. Moving on, line extension applications fees. So when a customer is planning a project and wants us to come out and do an estimate and review the project with them, there's an application fee that is charged. I think it's a $250, deposit that's put down. Basically, it's, Troy is going to go out and spend time talking with them, thinking about the project, putting together a proposal, and he doesn't want to do that if the project's, and spend all that time and effort for nothing then the project never happens. So there's a fee. If the project moves forward and is actually completed, that fee is refunded. But if it doesn't ever, rather than wasting his time, at least we're getting some money for that effort. Interest income, on our deposits. The dividend income and the miscellaneous income revenue. These are dollar figures that I get from VEPSA. It's related to our Vermont Transco and Belco common stock that we are owners of the regional transmission grid. And so we get dividends and revenue as being part owners of that. You'll hear us talking, throughout the years about buying into Vermont Transco, buying more stock. And there's we have to pay for that, but then we also get revenues and dividends associated with that ownership interest. So those are two big revenue sources for us. And then obviously the biggest revenue source is our sales of power to customers. So in 2021, we budgeted $2,016,000. We came in a little bit over that, which is great, $2,074,000. In looking at sort of trends and what VEPSA's sort of projecting for members, we've budgeted approximately a 7% increase looking at 2022. Hoping that things rebound.
Is that 7% because of usage or because of the rate increase we're looking at?
Nope, this is all based on not changing rates.
Okay.
So that's assuming our loads increase. Yep. All right. Moving on, disconnect, reconnect fees. So, we charge customers if they are going to be reconnected after they've been disconnected. So that's an important revenue line item. You'll see that in 2020 and 2021, those numbers were quite a bit lower than previous years because there was a disconnect moratorium in place for large portions of those years. So that, just changed how we did business. But that disconnect moratorium has been lifted. So hopefully we'll get back to normal with that, the normal process that we follow. I'd rather that we didn't have to disconnect people and people were paying their bills, but it's just the way we have to do business, unfortunately. So total revenue projected for 2022 is, about 200,000 higher in total compared to 2021 actuals. But of course, we know everything's getting more expensive, so it's not all good news. So for depreciation expense, I've put in estimates. I don't think we have actual numbers from an auditor yet, but I think, we're assuming that the number is sort of falling over time. So I put in $80,000 as a ballpark estimate for this year. And then we've got, tax expense, the gross revenue tax and gross fuel gross receipts tax are just a percentage of our sales that we have to pay. So interest expense, I believe this is the interest on primarily on our bond that we have for the substation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rosemary.
Yes, it's correct.
How much more time left on those?
It was a 30-year bond.
So it's a 30, yeah. I know it was a long one, but.
And we've got another 8 years or so, I think, Rosemary.
We paid 30,000 as a principal for a year.
Right. I have to go back and look at the schedule to see when the 30 years is up.
Probably halfway through it.
Okay, so quite a bit left.
Oh, yeah.
So the biggest single the biggest single expense for the electric department is the purchase power costs. This is the cost to buy the power that we then resell to our customers. As I mentioned in my email, we work with VEPSA. VEPSA manages our power contracts for purchasing the power and also manages our participation in the energy markets. And so they create a power supply budget for their members every year. So we get one. So this number, 1,337,775, is their projected power supply costs for us for 2022, plus $30,000, because we got our first 2022 power supply bill, and it was about $30,000 higher than budgeted just for the month of January alone. It was a confluence of factors. Loads were higher than expected. VEPSA has an estimate of what our load, what we are going to need to supply to our customers is. But obviously we have no real idea what our demand for power is going to be. If we have, everybody decides to go get a electric, car or fireplace and is, using a lot more power than we anticipated, then we will not have had contracts in place to meet our full demand. So we have to go out and buy more power so we have enough power to sell to our customers. And in the month of January, loads were higher than expected. So VEPSA did have to go out and buy power on behalf of its members, and the cost of power was exceedingly high, a large part due to the situation in the Ukraine. So that put a big strain for all VEPSA members, including us. So I've added that $30,000 because that's a known expense on top of what we're anticipating for the rest of the year. I have not put an additional, amount on top of what we were expecting for 2022, but we are having a VEPSA meeting early next week, and we're going to be talking about this issue. So I certainly am going to listen intently and try and get a sense from that meeting if, based on what they're seeing in the energy markets, they think it would be a good idea to plan for a few more months of, really volatile energy markets. In that case, it may be wise for us to just, add additional funds here to expect that, our power is going to be more expensive than we anticipated.
Our contract, it's a set amount, and if we have to buy a minimum or a maximum? I forgot how that works.
No, I mean, it's very complicated. I'm trying to think how to best answer that question. I mean, we have contracts for a certain amount of power. And then if we, on a certain day are going to use more than that, there's a day ahead market and then there's a real-time market. The day ahead market is cheaper than the real-time market. So you try and project. So, it looks like it's going to be a really hot day. So if it's in the summer, we know that we're going to use more power tomorrow. So you can bid into the day ahead market, to say, we're going to need a little bit more. If you're still wrong and you don't have enough, then you have to go into the real-time market, which is where you can get these really volatile prices. So it's a constant, weighing of what's going on in the world, what's going on in your own backyard in terms of usage and what is coming. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So let's see, other expenses. So this is a catch-all. These are charges that flow also through VEPSA. They include the AMI project, which we've talked about before. We have not actually bought into AMI yet, advanced meters, the smart meters, but we've had costs associated with doing all of the analysis and work that VEPSA has done in order to find a vendor, find a project, design a system for us. So we've been paying into that project. It also includes participation in the Renewable Energy Standard program, which is a requirement. We don't have a choice, but we show it as in a separate line item aside from our power supply costs, because I just think it's really important to keep track of it. And I would say that the cost of the Renewable Energy Standard is the main driver of why this is such a big increase over 2021. The cost to comply with the Renewable Energy Standard, which is a state requirement, are just going up and up and up. There's more demand for renewable energy, and so just the cost to comply and get the different types of energy to meet the requirements is becoming more expensive. VEPSA tries very hard to manage those costs and figure out ways for us to comply that are as cheap as possible, but the requirement every year ramps up and the cost of complying every year ramps up. So it's kind of an exponential increase. This is still much cheaper than if we did nothing. If you did nothing and don't meet your targets, you have to pay what they call an alternative compliance payment, which is even far more expensive than this. So, this is the lesser of two evils in terms of the finances. But it's still a little bit painful looking at it from the utility finance perspective.
So Meredith, I think I've heard you say that the people with solar panels, it costs us money? Or...
Yep. In some instances, it sort of depends on when the solar panels were installed. The state has changed the rules and what gets paid to customers over time. But generally speaking, I'm going to just use rough numbers. We essentially pay about 15 cents per kilowatt hour for power that's generated through the solar panels, where we could go and buy that power from the market for, back maybe I'll say, a few years ago for 5 cents. So it's dramatically more expensive for the utility.
So the people with solar panels, who is me and other people, that doesn't help us any to meet this other expense, because we're talking about how we keep having to get our power from more percentage of our power from renewable sources.
Right. It depends on if you are turning over your renewable energy credits to the utility. A lot of people who in the past worked with some of the, the big solar people that you hear of, as part of, I think, the lease terms or whatever the financing arrangements are between the homeowner and the company. A lot of times the company would keep the renewable energy credits and then sell them and make profit off of them. And so if the renewable energy credits are going to the solar company, the utility can't claim them because that would be double counting. So no, we wouldn't get credit for those. Now there's the option, and I think there's some financial benefit for a customer to opt to turn over their renewable energy credits to the utility. And if that happens, then yes, we do get to count it.
Yeah, I never knew that we had that option. I've never gotten any paperwork from anyone.
Yeah, it depends on, your situation. It may be something to ask the company you worked with about that. But, in the past, I think it was customary that they kept those renewable energy credits because they could, use them to their financial benefit. That's my understanding. I don't want to speak for any company. I don't know the ins and outs of their businesses, but that's my understanding. All right. So anyway, long way of saying, we have a big increase there. It's just the reality of complying with the requirements that the state has put forth.
Meredith, do you anticipate that changing direction, or is it just going to get worse and worse?
I think it's just gonna get worse and worse. Realistically, the percentage of your load that needs to be met with renewable resources increases every year, and as far as we can tell, the cost to comply and to do that is going to increase every year. There's also discussions about making those requirements even more over the coming years, I think at the legislative level. So I don't really see an end in sight. With that said, VEPSA is working as hard as they can to think about ways to make this more affordable for its members. So I don't want to be completely, doomsday kind of thing, that there's people working on it, trying to figure out how to make it as affordable as possible, but I don't see it getting less expensive. And I suspect even despite our best efforts, it is going to keep going up, at least to some degree.
That's on the state level, right? The requirements.
Yes. Yep.
So.
All right. So moving on, this next section is kind of sparsely populated. This is transmission system maintenance. So as I think most of you know, we are partial owners along with Morrisville Water and Light of a transmission line called B22. And so we share 15% of the costs of maintaining that infrastructure. And so every year Morrisville sends us a bill. I don't know if I spoke to Penny in Morrisville a few weeks ago about it, Rosemary. I don't know if it's actually arrived. These numbers here are actually placeholders. I think she told me it was going to run in about the $4,000 range. So that's what I just put in for actuals. What'd you say, Rosemary?
I haven't seen anything yet.
You haven't seen it yet? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
She has not seen anything yet.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I have horrible hearing. So for next year, I budgeted similar amount as last year. And then you'll see in 2021, we budgeted $6,000 for overhead line maintenance, which we did not spend. That is, back up, GMP is actually doing an upgrade to a portion of the B22 largely at their expense. Because it will help solve a transmission constraint problem that is financially affecting them. But there is a portion of that project that we've all agreed that Morrisville and Johnson would have had to do anyway. So we've agreed to pay for that piece of it. Even though GMP is going to do the whole project, we are going to reimburse them for the part of that project that we would have had to do anyway. We got GMP to agree to allow us to pay for it interest-free over 5 years. Our share is about $30,000. So I expected that project was going to start we budgeted in 2020. It didn't happen. So we budgeted again in 2021, didn't happen. So we're budgeting again in 2022. I believe I just saw that they intend to start construction on that. So I would expect that we will actually have to pay this $6,000 in 2022. Not a huge huge deal, but just, it's an expense we're going to have for 5 years. But it's great that the work is getting done and we didn't have to coordinate it. So I do see it sort of as a win-win. So moving on. Labor operations supervision engineering. This is primarily Troy's time for managing the electric department. I think that's the bulk of the time he puts towards the electric department is under that category, unless they're actually repairing the lines versus just his administrative and management of it. Safety operating supplies. This is just general, line supplies that they may need, small things, I would say. Labor meter expense. So periodically we have to fix the electric meters. And so we have a little bit of labor costs associated with working on the meters themselves. And then we have some expense related to actually buying supplies for the meters. We also will have some expenses associated with doing custom installations of meters. So this is a labor line item. Let's see. I think the customer installations expense would be materials related to that, not labor. Mutual aid. So periodically, we may need to call another utility for assistance if we have a major outage or we've got staff on vacation and something happens and we need backup assistance. It goes both ways. We get asked to come and help and they come and help us. So we budget some money to pay the other utility to come and help us. This is what we have to pay for training through NEPA. We decreased it. I think we're anticipating on doing a fewer number of trainings with NEPA, which is the Northeast Public Power Association, who does safety trainings for the municipal utilities in the area. I think we are going to reduce the number of them we do this year. I think there's not great enthusiasm for their program. I think it could use some attention. I think NEPA knows that. So we're going to do the ones obviously that we have to do. There's certain certifications that have to be done. First aid, CPR, pull top rescue, that all has to be done every year. But some of the other ones, I think the guys don't think are overly helpful. And so no sense in paying for them if they're not that useful.
I have a question, sorry, back to the labor, what you said was like more Troy's salary there for the electric department?
Yep.
Between 2020 actuals and 2021 actuals, there's about an $18,000 increase. Was that a raise? Or does it depend year to year, how much time he puts in, or how does that work?
I think no, there certainly wasn't a large raise. I think contractually they all got 3%. I think in 2020, and Rosemary can correct me again, I think a lot of their time was put to a different line item because of the pandemic and the way we, did staffing. We wanted to track time when they were either sort of on call from home during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, when everybody was sort of at home. So I think that's where some of the normal 2020 pay is showing up. Is that right, Rosemary?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's showing up in 2021.
It's showing a different line item.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah,
so
we just
more on par with what's normal, a normal year versus.
Yes. Yeah. We wanted to keep track of sort of the oddities from the pandemic in case we were able to be reimbursed for it. It never came to pass, but we wanted to at least track it so we could say, oh, this is the cost of, how we had to change our operations. But it didn't really end up being worth it.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Moving on to distribution system maintenance. So we have budgeted some money for working at the sub. We know that there are some excuse me, some projects at our substation. You know, things that the guys have identified as, you know, probably needing some attention. So they will likely put some time in there. You know, it looks like we've historically budgeted 10,000 and we've only usually spent around 5,000. So that might be an area, I'll highlight it, where I can talk to Troy and see if we can knock that down a little bit. And unless he specifically has something in 2022 that he thinks is going to take more time than historically it's taken. We've put in the last 2 years, 15,000 for, this is actual equipment at the substation. I know that there is, I think, a recloser that he's got his eye on that may need some attention and might need to put some money into equipment wise. So we put some money in there for that. This 27,700, that is sort of an in and an out. Remember, up under revenue, we had the deferred revenue related to the 100C of 27,700. This is an offsetting expense because I don't want to put the revenue in because that revenue can only be used on that project, and we can only have that revenue if we spend that much on the project. So I have to put in an offsetting expense to make it sort of washed out. I'm not sure that we're going to spend that much, but again, if I didn't put this in here, it would be overestimating revenue. Substation maintenance contracted. Again, I think Troy, I think, has indicated it might be helpful to have there are entities that are experts in substation work. And I think he is anticipating maybe reaching out to one of them to get some advice on some work that might need to be done at the substation. So we put some money in for that. Labor maintenance of lines. So this is the big chunk of money for when the crew actually, you know, is working and maintaining the line. So storms or just regular maintenance, this is where they would code their time. Maintenance of line supplies. So obviously it's, you know, lots of different materials associated with doing line work. And having to keep an inventory on hand. So in the event of a storm or some sort of accident or outage, they have what they need in inventory. And this one, that's when we've increased it 25%. Again, because we just know, you know, Troy's been trying to order transformers, and on top of not being able to get them for 20 weeks, they're also just dramatically more expensive than they have been in previous years. So I think, you know, he felt strongly that we really needed to bump that number up to reflect reality. Tree trimming labor, this is our staff doing tree trimming, the right of way, keeping that open. It's an important part of reducing outages, getting trees and limbs out of the way. You can see that we weren't able to get a lot of that done this year. It's on par with 2020. More notably, we were not able to get a contract crew. We often, in previous years, would, you know, in 2019, we spent $26,000 with a contracted tree crew to come in and cut the right of way. A lot of times they will do bigger trees, you know, even more difficult trees that we just don't have the equipment and expertise to do. Troy reached out multiple times and they just didn't have staff available. Like we've heard over and over again, an absence of workers. So we were not able to get the contracted crew in at all, despite multiple attempts to get them scheduled. So we're hoping that we can get them in. We've budgeted an increase in 2022, knowing again that we expect the cost of those types of services to be going up quite a bit. People having to raise their pay rates in order to attract workers, and you know, I think again we're just trying to be realistic about what things are going to cost. So labor maintenance of line transformers. This is specifically labor working on transformers. This would be our staff doing the work. This $33,250 is actually the cost to buy transformers. This is an increase of 25% over what we budgeted in 2021, and also then includes about $12,000 for a large transformer that we know we're going to have to buy for the Jolly project. So this is like a situation where we're going to have that merchandising and jobbing revenue up at the top that will include both materials and labor. And here we've got, some of that money coming out specifically paying for the transformer for that project. Labor maintenance of streetlights. So this is the cost to maintain streetlights in the village, the actual labor to do it, and then maintenance of street lighting. This is parts and materials. Miscellaneous maintenance of distribution. I think this is more just a catch-all. I can't say for sure, what fell into that. I can look that up in a little bit. And labor snow removal, we allocate, a portion of the cost of plowing out municipal buildings, municipal properties to the electric department because, the garage serves the electric department, the municipal building serves the electric department. So it gets allocated some of those snow removal expenses. Moving on to customer account operations. This labor meter reading. So obviously the cost for staff to go around and read meters. Customer records and collections. There's staff costs associated with delivering notes to customers, notifying them that they're going to have their power shut off. Just sometimes doing checks on, I think, rereads. So there is a large expense associated with customer interaction and trying to get people honestly to pay their bills. Uncollectible accounts, every year I think we do a write-off of bills that we've just determined are not going to get paid despite our best efforts. Miscellaneous accounts expense. Rosemary, do you know what generally falls into the miscellaneous customer accounts expense? We can, I can't off the top of my head think of what the miscellaneous ones are, but we can maybe pull that one just to look at it.
Meredith, on a quick question on the uncollectible accounts. I know they've been pushing lots of the programs to be able to help pay people's utilities and stuff. Is that?
We've gotten about $50,000.
That's what I'm saying. So is that counted in this?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. The student who moves and is gone or.
Right, I know them ones that we did not too long ago. I was just saying, was some of that revenues counted for them programs also? Or do they not pay the full bill, they pay a portion?
That doesn't go there, it goes against their account and accounts receivable.
Okay.
So that revenue would be up above under the sales revenue by customer type.
So Meredith, I'm not clear, what makes this so expensive? Is it because people like Troy or whomever is actually going to people's doors and knocking on the doors? Or like, what's the time piece? I don't.
They're putting physical notices on the doors.
Yeah, we're required to deliver notes before we can. There's a whole process that we are required to go through by the state before we disconnect someone. And it's labor intensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We would love it to be simplified. We've argued for it to be simplified, but have not been successful.
That's a coding error that should have been coded to uncollectible accounts.
Okay, is that 2066?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that makes more sense. So, delete that, and I'm going to reduce this number. I think, generally, that'd be fine. Okay. Moving down to administrative and general. So we've got an allocation of the trustees' salaries to the electric department. Auditor salaries, these are not the professional auditors, these are the elected auditors. I don't think they've been very active recently, Rosemary. Do you think it's worth continuing to include this?
Yes.
Okay.
One auditor did tell me that he was gonna come in once a week, but I haven't seen him since he said that.
That week is enough.
Just it wasn't a start.
Well, you gotta look at it.
Sounds good. So administrative salaries, again, it's allocation of all of the administrative employee salaries to the electric department. We budgeted almost 107,000 in 2021. We came in under budget on that. Due, I think in large part to me no longer being employed with the village. For the 2022 budget, it assumes a village manager for 6 months of the year. So it's, more than 2021 actuals, but less than the 2021 budget that would have assumed full year. Stores expense labor. I believe this is the labor cost associated with inventory work. Just keeping track of all of our many materials and parts and the things involved in doing line work, the electric system. Vehicle and equipment maintenance labor. This is our staff time actually working on our vehicles and our equipment. So labor costs, internal labor costs for that. Like I said, we try and do as much as humanly possible in-house. Office expense. This is a catch-all for many things. Postage and paper. What am I forgetting? Do I have notes over here that I can't see? Oh yeah. In the past, includes money to put towards the municipal building fixes, as well as our NEMRIC costs, which is the software that we use to do our utility billing. Outside services, I've bumped that up for this year. I've put in legal for 15,000, which is an increase over last year. About almost 24,000 for the village garage engineer, 13,500 for management consultant, 5,000 for the audit, 6,000 for CRC, which is our after hours dispatch service. And I've still included about 1,000 towards our website. I'm going to make a note. I still need to check with Brian on his thoughts on that. So that's a pretty big jump compared to previous years, but I think the legal expenses potentially are going to be pretty high. The village garage engineer it is what it is. We've agreed to pursue that analysis, and the electric department is being allocated a large share of that cost. See, safety, training, education. So I must have lied earlier. So these are the NEPA classes. Let me go back up above and see where I was talking about them before when reducing the number. So this is the cost. I apologize. This 4,000 for labor, safety and training. That's when the staff actually attend the training. So that the hours they've allocated to the training, that's those labor costs. Down here, I apologize for the confusion. The 7,500 is the actual cost of the classes themselves that we have to pay. It's $750 per class. It's $150 per person. And we're assuming we're going to do 10 of them this year.
And it's lower because you said they decided they didn't need to do some of the stuff to just sticking with the basic stuff. So
yep. It's lower in part because of that. And also in previous years, we had Jeff and Chan attending the NEPA apprenticeship program. And so the costs associated with that program were also included under the safety training and education. They are both now completed those apprenticeship programs. So we don't have those travel as well as sort of enrollment fees. Under lobbying, it's essentially our dues to be members of the Northeast Public Power Association. NEPA does sort of lobby on our behalf at the national level on behalf of municipal and public power in the Northeast. So we do have to pay annual dues for their services, and by being NEPA members, we can have these NEPA safety classes. They also do some other trainings for administrative staff as well. VEPSA fees, so these are the administrative fees that we pay to VEPSA for the many variety of services they provide to us, but there's a section that's allocated towards sort of administrative overhead for them. So that's gone up, you know, slightly from previous years, but they tried really hard to control it. And I believe at the last VEPSA meeting, we voted to apply some of the previous year's surplus to reduce expenses. I have to go back and look at the notes to see if that's going to affect 2022 or a future year, but they're trying very hard to keep their administrative costs and what they're charging their members down, because they know we're all sort of suffering right now with the crazy energy markets. So insurance, this is property insurance. Again, as we talked about in other departments, it's down slightly this year, which is great. Employee benefits, I think this is primarily the boot allowance that we have for staff. You know, they're able to buy new boots each year related to their work. Health insurance, this is the electric department's allocation of the health insurance costs that the village pays. Obviously, it's a very expensive benefit. Sick, vacation, holiday, that's it's just a calculation based on total time, and we assume a certain percentage is going to be taken in sick and vacation and holiday time. We break it out. The unemployment costs. Rosemary, I'll have to check in with you. I wasn't exactly sure if we're anticipating any changes this year. So I'll check in with you on that. I budgeted an increase just sort of as a placeholder, but we should talk about that. Retirement and Social Security match, again, are just percentages based on wages. Uniforms, we are in a contract, so we're anticipating to be very close to 2021. Don't expect any changes there. Those are the uniforms for our crew, primarily for FR clothing that's required when you do line work. Miscellaneous administrative expense. So we generally budget about $1,500. That includes, we have to pay a fee every year to VTrans for our rail crossings. So even if we have a power line going over or under the rail right of way, like the rail trail, we have to pay VTrans for that. And then under the 2021 actuals, that's where I stuck some of the back wages. Again, like I talked about under the general department, that's not where they're going to stay, but I wanted to put them in the 2021 actuals, even though they are not in the right places, because I just wanted to make sure to include those expenses that we anticipate. So coming down to the bottom, so we're going to go to my notes. Actually, I'm going to switch quickly to the version I emailed you because that's more clear. Sorry. Stop share. I just got to go to a different file. Hopefully you can see this. This is
market price.
So I just wanted to use this form because it's a little bit easier to understand. So 2021 actuals, the surplus or deficit, so in this case, it's a deficit, including depreciation expense. What we projected to be depreciation expense was a deficit of $41,204. The depreciation expenses we estimated were about $90,000. I don't know if Rosemary agrees with my thinking on this or not. It's maybe not, it's not really an accountant thinking, it's more just me. It's not an actual cash outlay. We are not paying anybody or writing a check for depreciation expense. So when I think about surplus and deficit, it doesn't seem entirely accurate for me to include depreciation expense. So backing that out, because we've not had to write a check to somebody for $90,000, comes up with a surplus of about $49,000.
Yep.
And then if you back out, we have that $30,000 bond payment that Rosemary mentioned. In my mind, we sort of finished the year cash wise about $19,000 to the good. That's how my brain looks at it. And again, Rosemary can disagree with that if she wants to, but that's how I like to think about it, in terms of understanding how we're doing. Depreciation expense is a real thing. Our assets are depreciating. And I think from an accounting perspective, sort of like with a reserve fund, if you budget a depreciation amount every year and you can cover those costs, then presumably you are able to afford to replace those assets when they need to be replaced. And it's also important for us to include depreciation expense in our budgets, because if we want to go in for a rate case, if we didn't include it in our budget, those expenses would not be eligible in terms of a justification for a rate increase. So it's important to include it, but I always have this bottom section because it, to me, makes more sense. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So looking at
actual numbers for 2021, you're saying was slightly to the good. 19, is that what the number was?
Yeah, 18,796. And again, some of these numbers aren't completely finalized, but
Right. But in the ballpark. So
in the ballpark, I don't think we went into the red in 2021. And again, Rosemary, please feel free to disagree with me.
But this is where the capital reserve comes in by using the depreciation in the figures. Right. If you budget for that depreciation, it will leave you with actual cash on hand.
Yes.
Could be used to pay the loan payments.
Could be used for loan payments or something down the road, a bigger project.
Right.
So
just to jump into 2022, including depreciation expense, we show a deficit of about 117,000. We in the budget included depreciation expense of 80,000, so that leaves a deficit of about 37,000. After the bond payment of 30,000, that increases the deficit to about 67,000, not including depreciation expense. So, we are projecting what I would call a real cash deficit this year, which we did project that, last year. We projected $136,000 deficit, including depreciation last year. So, it's
close.
It's close, exactly.
So it's been a while since I've been on the board. So can you walk us quickly through a rate increase case and kind of a timeline fashion?
So I have not been through a rate case, a rate increase here.
Never happened since 2010.
Right.
Yeah. I believe we have not done what we would call a rate case, I think since 2010, and maybe even been before that, where we actually do an in-depth analysis of your budget and what, fixed costs and variable costs and costs by customer type to see, if the rates that you have in place are accurate, in terms of assigning costs to where they belong. I don't think it's any secret that, NVU has come to me multiple times saying, our rate in Johnson is higher than our rate in Lyndonville. Very different system. NVU is a huge portion of our load, whereas in Lyndonville, which is a much bigger system, they're a much smaller piece. And so I always say to them, it's really how you're affecting the costs in our utility compared to how you affect the costs in Lyndonville. Long way of saying a rate case will look at those questions and say, is the rate that you're charging NVU fair and accurate based on your system and what your costs actually are. So to do something like that, that's really in-depth rate case, that's a long process that, we would involve most likely VEPSA staff who are really experts in doing those sorts of rate cases. That would be a pretty involved process. To actually do just, I think, a very simple across the board percentage increase, I would think within 6 months, you could probably get through the regulatory process to do something like that. And I will go and ask VEPSA staff to run me through exactly the timeline and process for something more simple like that, where you're just taking every single customer type and every single rate and say, increase it by 5% across the board. That would certainly be a much faster process than taking a step back and looking at all of your rates and tariffs and saying, are we going to reshuffle where costs are?
Okay.
So I will definitely reach out and get you that information.
And VEPSA will help us with that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's something they can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say we
They can help you with both types.
I mean, obviously we need board consent here, but I don't think anybody disagrees that we need to start looking at this. We're looking at a cash deficit of $67,000 this year. So we're gonna need to look at the rate increase.
Now, if the college comes back into full session this fall, is that gonna help this much at all?
No.
If they get back to, the height of what they once were, certainly that would help us. If we go up here, I can just highlight, hopefully you can see this line. Looking at the 2018 actuals and the 2019 actuals, our sales to NVU were about $615,000. Our 2021 actuals were, $546,000. So, that's what, $70,000 difference. So certainly that would help matters. I'm not expecting that. I think higher education has changed the way people do, remote learning. So I would be surprised if we ever get back to that sort of heyday of them as a customer. But I could be wrong. I mean, they could change their programming and have more people on or do different things that are more energy intensive. So, I don't want to be overly pessimistic, but I'm not expecting that to happen.
I just have some, to go back into the budget a little bit. Meredith, with the outside services, did you say that that's mostly legal expenses, or is that?
I think she said $15,000 was budgeted in that area.
Yeah, of that, 15,000 was legal expenses. About 24,000 is the electric department's share of the engineer that's going to be looking at the village garage. I put in 13,500 for my time, which I can look at adjusting. 5,000 for our audit. 6,000, which is about the annual cost of our contract with CRC, which is the after hours dispatch entity. And then 1K, 1,000 to put towards a website update. And I need to check on that piece.
Okay. And okay, just as a taxpayer, I would love to see that particular line divided out, because there's so much packed into that line. It would be nice to see that spelled out a little clearer. Meredith, and why did you think that you needed to double that budget for next year? I mean, it's literally double.
Right. So, I mean, the large chunk of that is the 24,000 for the engineer. That's a one-time project. So, take away 24,000, we're at about 40,000. And then we bumped up legal a little bit just based on, I think, actuals. And then it includes my time as a consultant, which is sort of offset by not having my time up above as under the administrative salaries. So it, more is getting put in here, but assume I go away and you've hired a full-time village manager, then that number will go down and the administrative salaries number will go up. So it's kind of a bit of a wash to a certain degree, not an exact wash, but does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, again, it would be so much clearer if we could have that broken out into individual lines, at least the bigger stuff. That's just that would be my preference as a taxpayer.
But I think a lot of that's just a one-time thing, so breaking it out, the next one's gonna be an empty space. So, all right, any other questions, guys?
Good, no.
All right, yeah, so moving forward with BEPSA, so when you do reach out to them, tell them that, obviously our situation with the deficit coming up this year, and we'll probably need to move on something, and whatever information they can give us as far as if we can do just across the board, if they think that's gonna be sufficient.
Right.
Definitely have them, relay that through you.
Yep, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
So I will go get Troy. Or do you want him up next?
Just trying to think where we're at here. So you know the updates. So you're gonna finalize this stuff and get this to us shortly.
Yep.
So prove that for the warning, which was the 11th.
What's that?
The warning has
Warning needs to be posted by next Sunday.
by next Sunday.
And for the warning, we just need the general department number, right, Rosemary?
Yes.
Yeah, so I will prioritize getting that one finalized.
So it has to be up by
You said next, I'm sorry, Rosemary, what date?
next Sunday, she
Next
said.
Sunday, but I'd like to do it more later than Friday.
So the 4th.
Sure. So the 4th. Okay. Yep.
And so we'll do the village. So the village warning. We need to adopt this tonight, you think, to be able to, and then plug the numbers in, or?
Unless you want to have another meeting next Wednesday night or something, a short meeting.
I think we can approve this, and then the numbers will be the total of all the budget items we've gone through and adjustments made here tonight, right? So we won't actually have the numbers tonight, but we can approve what we've approved tonight. All right, so you've all got the village warning in front of you.
You want us each to sign the one you've given us? Or do you-
No, we
that's
just-
not the real one yet.
Yeah, we just
Oh, that's not the real
need
one.
we just need to approve this format with the numbers being adjusted as we spoke to tonight for the to be able to get this so that she can warn it, or we can have another meeting before the 4th. So what's your budget?
I think we can approve it, as long as we're going by the numbers we just talked
Yeah.
about.
I'd like to approve it and avoid another meeting since we're having our fill of them
Okay,
lately.
so is that a motion?
I move that we approve the warning tonight
Okay,
and fill in the numbers that we've talked about all through this process.
I'll second that.
second, any discussion?
So we can add to this, right?
This is discussion right now. Okay.
Okay.
Is this water and light commissioner someone we would be paying, or is, what kind of a position is that?
Meredith is perfectly wonderful.
Meredith is the water and light commissioner.
Generally, our manager is the water and light commissioner, correct?
So at the last meeting, select board meeting, one of the last select board meetings, when we were going over, I guess the information meeting, I asked about I think it's Article 13, about approving the $40,000 budget item for community and economic development. And they specifically did not put position because they wanted to see what the trustees were planning to do. And I don't see anything about that on this warning about approving money for community economic development, which I know you said you were gonna wait until you did
Yep,
budgets.
so we're done with the budget, so appropriate time to talk about it. Anything that we add to this is gonna be a rate increase. So if you wanna put monies in here for an economic developer for this year, whatever the number was, $6,700 a cent. So whatever money that you put in there will, if you put $6,700 in there for an economic developer, that will raise the taxes 1 cent. Or if you want to put in 13.4, it's gonna raise it 2 cents.
Well, let me ask you, if we did the thing like Tatro did and hire that girl in Burlington, say, hey, we're looking for a grant for this, she does it and we pay her that way per grant. That way she's only looking for what we need. Do we have to raise, or that would come out of the, I mean, how does that?
Now correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the grants do allow for a grant writer, right? And some don't. So yes and no, depending on what the grants are and what they allow. So
And you really want somebody to look for grants and to write them. You know, you.
Yeah, that's what that lady does. She finds them, she writes them, she gets them, and then she gets paid for it.
I can't speak to that 100%. I'm not 100% sure that's the correct process, but
I think Tatro was saying that when he was here,
Similar to what you're saying.
kind of like a hired gun.
yeah.
I'd like to put something in there for it, because I think we get more than that back.
But we got also, I mean, we're not in the process of saying that not all grants are fully funded, so there's gotta be the match money.
Yeah.
So you gotta really think about that at the same time also. So if you're gonna put in, what did you say, 6,000?
$6,700 is about 1 cent.
So if you do that, you know what I mean, you gotta consider, are we putting the match money in there to hire a person to actually get these grants that we're gonna have match money for? So
Not all of them are though, and
I said that,
Yeah.
not all are.
Yeah, but if you're spending money to go after a grant that is a match, then it doesn't make any sense to do that if you don't have the money.
That was kind of
to
what-
pay the match. So.
Now,
My
at the
understanding
same
this is
same time,
also-
you could. At the same time, you could. They could search for just the ones that are fully funded, but do we have projects for the grants that are out there for fully funded at this time?
Question.
Comment. So it's my understanding that this would be not a joint employee with the town, but it would be in coordination with the town. And the town perhaps would be able to, offer more of the matching funds if necessary. I mean, again, it depends on the grant, it depends on what it's going for, but this would be in coordination with the town. Because they knew they couldn't fully fund the position. So they're hoping that the village will kick in some sense of
Split
law.
it with them, or
I thought the
Right.
last time when we were talking about it with the town in our last meeting, when we were talking about a joint person, they said the last time that didn't work and they didn't want to do a joint person.
I'm not in favor of a joint.
No, they're not in favor of.
Oh, okay,
That's what
okay,
I was saying.
okay.
This is not a joint position, but in a sense, it's a coordinated effort, I would say, to hire someone to bring money into the town and village of Johnson.
So I think we all agree on that. It's just which form of doing it. Are we gonna hire somebody, pay, help, all that, and hope that they can bring in enough, I don't know, enough that we need, but not too much to where we can't afford it, or hire somebody to specifically go after exactly what we ask them to go after, and then just pay them per grant. But I think we all come to a conclusion, we
One
do
thing
need
don't
it.
know is if there's a lot of grant money out there, if we can find a person who has the time to do it for us, even. I mean, maybe when Greg got that person to help with Jenna's Promise, things were a little different than they are now, I don't know.
So we'd have to ask, we'd have to
Yeah.
reach out to her and kind of
Well, we
find
need-
out.
Well, Greg also said that he presented with her with a list of what, this is what I'd like to do, this is what I'd like to do, this is what I'd like to do. Can you see if you can find grants for that?
Right.
So unless we have an actual specific list, we're just gonna pay somebody by the hour to search for grants? Is that what it's coming down to?
Well, I mean, some of that, they do have to do that.
Absolutely.
So, but some of it are grants that are really well-known and they can just start applying for them. And some of them are no match. And maybe we start off with those, the no match.
Again, but the grants that they'd apply for, you would need a project for that grant.
Sure, and
So-
I mean, I have some, I have
I have a
ideas.
list that's going to.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I don't think there's any, I think we can certainly find grants that we have plans for.
So I think if, you know what I mean, we've all, the consensus was that we shouldn't raise taxes. So this would raise taxes.
Well,
So
we can, so can we make that a separate article that they can vote yea or nay
that's
on
what
that
I was
article,
gonna
right?
say, should we
So-
ask them?
So if we
Should
put
we
forward,
spend?
we put forward a dollar amount with the notation of how much it will raise, how much it will impact their taxes, then they have the choice to vote yea or
Well,
nay.
let me ask you, can you do that with like any kind of a separation? Like here, one option is we can hire somebody, it will raise taxes for grant writing, or we can hire out paid at, like this or that, and kind of give them a choice.
I would say that if we've got an article written that we're gonna
I would
X,
write the article very similar to what the
Yes.
town did and put a dollar amount.
the
Should
dollar
we
amount
spend $40,000
Yeah.
in 2022 to?
Yeah.
for grant
The
writing.
village would not work for it.
No, I'm in
And
favor of that. If
that-
you can tell us to raise the taxes, I have no problem.
Yeah, no,
Besides that, I don't want my tax increase.
If that,
You can vote on it, you got one vote.
If that-
right?
if that-
You got your
if that
wife.
fails, then we can look at the option of trying to find a headhunter for lack of a better word.
I'm fine with that.
So,
Put it on the voter.
so we need a dollar
It's their
amount,
money.
and I don't think,
Yeah, that's the whole
and I don't
point
think it should be
of making it
$40,000.
I think it should be what the select board put in there.
Do you know what their budget is versus ours?
Yeah,
$40,000.
that's a drop in the bucket on their budget. I would say that if we're gonna do this, though, I believe that it should not be anywhere near a shared employee. And I think that we ought to have
That's 6 cents.
an actual in-depth talk about what projects we could use. I know Meredith had a few projects that she was talking, like you were asking about it last time, so.
I think you're going to find that we will change what Johnson looks like by hiring someone
Absolutely,
and changing that whole thing.
absolutely.
What's,
And-
what's the village's, what was last year's village, wait a minute, how much on 100 was it? For,
What was that?
what was the tax rate for the village last year?
About 18 cents.
So you're talking about a 33% increase.
So I think if you do this, you're going to change Johnson quite a bit. And
You don't have to sell me, I'm just stating facts.
Okay.
I'm
so
not-
I think- But I think we need to tell people at the informational meeting that that is what it's going to do for our village. I think we need to sell it to people and have them realize what it is that we can do with a grant writer and an economic development person.
Make a motion.
I make a motion to put in the warning the same, I don't know what you call it, same article as the select board for an economic development grant writer person. For
Are you-
$40,000.
For $40,000.
40,000?
And you want, I would like to see, as a friendly suggestion, the amount it will raise, the percent or the cents on 100 would raise the taxes, so they're informed.
Okay, that's fine.
That you want to add that.
40,000 with an equivalent of
And-
16%, that what it was.
Well, it'd be whatever, it'd be 6 cents, it'd be 6 cents, 6 cents on 100,
So,
or
I'll second that.
percentage or cent or whatever. So we can need a second on that.
Motion.
Second. Okay, any more discussion?
Just a point of clarification, on the select board's warning, they don't say position or person, they just put
Economic.
Oh,
community and economic development.
okay.
So
I think
But-
that, and.
but you could
I
say
wanted
person
to-
if you wanted to, but they don't.
Well, you said to follow,
I
you said to follow that and then add what it would affect the taxes.
Yeah.
So, and you get a second, any more discussion?
I mean,
I have to think about. what
Was
I was
it-
gonna say.
was this the select board doing 40,000?
Yes.
Again, their budget is a lot more than ours.
Then we got a motion in a second, so.
Leave it up to the taxpayers.
No, I just said their budget was a lot more than ours to go along with what Will said, so if we're gonna a match amount that they were discussing.
Yeah.
Seemed really extreme, so I'm just saying that I think if we wanted this to really pass, we might wanna knock it down.
Well, we're not, it's gonna be two different people. They have their person, we have our person.
I understand that, I'm just saying that we're putting out a number that matches their budget, which is as far as ours. So it's a 6 cents per 100, maybe we should consider it at 3 cents per 100 for this year.
Good point.
That's all. I'm for it. I want money in the town. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we need to have projects for it and matching money. And the consensus was that we didn't really want to raise taxes. So if the villagers are for it, I guess then it's fine. But I think that's just a big jump for a number to match exactly what the select board's trying to do. You know, unless the town of Johnson wants to kick us some more money to help us with that. And I doubt that.
It would give us a better chance of a pass.
That's what I'm saying, you know what I mean? We're looking at it, we're trying to match what they were doing, and that's a large number with our budget. So, I mean, 6 cents on 100 doesn't sound like a lot. Depends on what your and Don's land's worth, you know what I mean? So that could mean a lot more to you than it would to me, per se.
And it still doesn't cut us off from trying to get the other grants, the style that Craig
Absolutely.
got,
Absolutely.
where we don't pay anything, the person gets paid out of the grant.
Maybe we just gotta be smarter about how we say, well, let's try to get money for this project. Well, maybe we could do 2 smaller projects the first year versus get them to show that it's equity coming in that way, you know, it's helping us out while we've added an expense. Because like we said, we gotta calculate it. There's gonna be a rate increase.
So they're making their own money too, along with getting. paid.
Absolutely, you know, I mean,
It just gets paid lower by us.
Just talk
and they're
about it.
earning more.
Okay,
does that make sense, Diane, you know?
I mean, yeah, but.
I don't care either way.
At the same time, I don't know how far, like, what number are you thinking about?
I was just saying that lower. I don't have no particular number. I'm fine if we want to go up to 40,000. Do we think that's gonna pass? That's all I was throwing out there.
Well, I also think that we need to make sure that we are all on board to sell it to the people.
I think we just had that consensus.
Okay,
It's
okay.
just the amount is what I.
Well, kind of did. I'll go along with it for the taxpayer, but I still like the hit 100 part. That's what I personally want, but I have no problem if you guys want to go and hire a person and leave it up to the taxpayer. Because if we voted on it, I'd vote against it. But if we're gonna leave it up to the taxpayer to pay it, I will go along with whatever they want. So I'm not gonna sit there and say, I want this, because I don't.
Maybe throw 30,000. You know, I mean, it's just a thought the first time, you know.
Well, I think that's a good point that you're all making, D, about, you know, this is gonna have to be a group effort to get this to pass. So what's a number that, like, this board feels like they all could rally behind?
Maybe just a little somewhat lower than the town, because we can say the number can be 11% or lower percent.
Rosemary, what would it be for, say, the 30,000? What would that be per percent versus 40?
Hold on.
Maybe 4?
Well, let me answer, if somebody's trying to get a job, are they gonna wanna get a part-time job, or are they gonna want a full-time job?
They could be working for us. It may be the same person, but
Well, yeah, I mean.
they could be working for Morsel at that time also.
Diane Meyer is,
Yeah, it wouldn't be an employee, it'd be an outside work.
Right, outside counsel, yeah.
So your question is 4.5.
So at 30. I mean, that's a little more stomach than to me, because we're pushing, you know, like we said, we know there's gonna be a rate increase. We haven't had one since, what was it, 2010? 10?
10 on electric.
You know, we're talking 12 years, and that's not realistic for us to keep up with the electrical grid in the area, but not having a rate increase. We all understand that's coming. So if we could throw out a smaller amount, I think we'd have a better chance of successfully getting it.
Okay.
That's just all I'm saying.
All right, so ready to vote?
Well,
Are we
there's a
doing-
motion and a
We're gonna make an
There's a
amendment.
motion and a
to our
second.
motion.
So, I'm sorry,
Are we doing,
I'm sorry,
are
what?
we doing 30,000?
Well, you made it.
There's a
that's what I was
motion,
going
there's a
on.
motion and a second on the floor for 40.
No, it's something that.
We can do it after.
all Have to agree on and put it to the public.
Uh,
And,
We've already said we're gonna do that.
okay, good.
I mean, we can have personal opinions. I'm just letting you know, I know you want us all to be like for it and all that. I'm not, but I'm the one who seconded your thing that the taxpayer can make that decision. Me personally, I don't think we
So
should
we
go that
got
route.
two
but
choices
we
here.
can.
You can vote on the 40,000, or you can take back your second, you can take back your motion.
And then remotion.
I take back.
You take back your second.
I was on the
You
second.
did, sorry, second.
I take back the second.
Take back, okay, new motion,
Keep everything the same except 30,000.
do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Seeing none, okay, all those in favor said motion signify with an aye.
Aye.
Nay. Diane,
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Now, this is just going on this article, correct?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
going on, Article, be
Taxpayer
Article
decides.
6, I'm assuming, right? Or in there somewhere, be Article 6. Okay, so with that added to this, are we willing to accept the document here to be presented as a warning for the village annual elections?
I so motion that.
Motion and
I'm
second.
not gonna spit it all out again.
Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Passes. So we don't need to meet before
No, you guys want to come in next week.
and sign them. So as soon as it's ready, just send out an email and we'll sign it. Okay, so now that's out of the way. Troy has requested to speak on behalf of his crew. And I told him I would give him time to do that. So floor is yours, Troy.
Okay, can you hear me all right, Will? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I did not attend the meeting in person on Wednesday. I attended virtually. It was brought to my attention by other village employees that were there in person that there appeared to be some sort of a document that was being read on site during the meeting by certain members of the public. Based on the comments made by members of the public and overheard by the other village employees, the staff feels it contained potentially false or misleading information about them. For instance, the village crew overheard a member of the public say that only one member of village staff was a certified line worker and the others were just pretending to be. And just for the record, that's not true. I'm a certified first-class lineman, so isn't Nate, and we're both documented through the state of Vermont. The potential circulation of this incorrect information, such as this, makes the village employees, including myself, feel like we may be getting targeted for some other purpose. I'm just wondering if anybody on the board of trustees is aware of this document or just know anything about it. And that's all we're asking.
I'm not aware of the document.
I
Troy.
think it's the one Diane gave to Kyle.
It's the
arbitration.
The arbitration award.
Okay, and why was that distributed? And you distributed that, Diane?
Yes,
Okay,
the Kyle.
you gave it to Kyle. Okay, that's all I need to know. I appreciate that you let me have the time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.
Did Troy not read the arbitrators award?
He wasn't here to know what paper was, the guys were being,
No, but did nobody receive that, that document?
We did.
Well, we didn't even know it. We didn't even get it until you gave it to us.
I know, but I mean, wouldn't they have gotten it too?
whether he got it or not, he was asking about what document was passed. That's all.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm asking though, did they get the award?
I don't think so, or he would have known what the document that you were just asking questions about.
Okay.
All right, so Troy's all set. All right, so.
I thought Troy was also going to present a plan, or maybe he hasn't gotten. it together.
Yeah, it hasn't got together yet, so with that. So you guys got the letter from, actually, this wasn't on the agenda, but the letter from Meredith.
Yeah.
Right, so I don't believe we have to accept that because that's non-negotiable. So that's that, and then we got one more thing, which is an executive session personnel matter. I did speak to Brian today, and he said it's for the issue at hand. It is the way it's written here is perfectly fine and legal. So if you guys want to hear about it, we'll need a motion to go into executive session pursuant to personnel matter pursuant 1 BSA 31(3)(4).
Let's go into executive session pursuant. Pursuant 1 BSA 31(3)(4).
With the 5 trustees and Rosemary.
With the 5 trustees and Rosemary.
I'll second.
Don't you have to have a purpose?
I spoke with Brian today, and he said, as it's written here, it's all, because it's a personnel matter, it's a straight up, that's all that needs to be said.
That's the purpose.
Does it involve any money?
No. No, we can't vote any monies in executive session, period. I think we'd have to come out of executive session and vote something, but the discussion, the personnel matter is privileged, and it falls under the executive session orders.
So I seconded.
Seconded, any discussion? Any more discussion?
Will you be taking action when we come out?
I do not anticipate taking action when we come out. I anticipate closing the meeting.
Okay. And sorry, you quickly said a letter from Meredith. Is that a public document?
Yes. Actually, I'll just read it. To the trustees, greetings. I'm writing to provide notice of termination of Village Municipal and Utility Consulting LLC contract with the Village of Johnson. Per the terms of the contract, I'm providing 2 weeks notice, meaning the last day of the consulting service will be provided to the village will be Friday, March 11th, 2022. That's Meredith. So that's that letter. Okay, so no more discussion about the executive session. Seeing none, all those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Okay.